What's up, guys? Welcome back. Welcome back to the Goosenov Show. So today I'm going to discuss an idea. Oh, shoot. My mic just fell off. Anyway, today I'm going to discuss an idea about identity and I guess how we become the people we are, maybe. And I also want to kind of go into, well, you'll see. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. But I was thinking for a while. Well, actually, first off, a while back I was talking with one of my friends, and this was back when I was studying engineering in undergraduate school, and at that time I was pretty lonely just because, you know, as an engineer, especially as an engineer with ADHD, you're probably going to be just, you know, isolated doing work by yourself for most of the day, most of your time. And, well, I don't know. When you're isolated like that, it can be difficult because, well, I didn't really know why it was, but the reason why it is, well, why there's, I guess, there can be a lot of problems with isolation like that, came to me from one of my friends when I asked him about that. And he said, I forgot exactly what philosophers told him or what philosopher he found this from, but he said, essentially, one of the philosophers he read well, maybe. I'm not precisely sure kind of how he came to this, but he said that how you, or what do you call it? How you perceive yourself and how you identify yourself with yourself, you know, what you identify yourself as, isn't a product of who you are, like inherently. He said that there really, maybe even went as far to say there isn't really an inherent you. He said that the person who you are and the person maybe who you become is maybe a product of some part of who you are, but also it's a product of your relation and interactions with others. And I think this is definitely true, and this is definitely an important thing. Like you only can really, I think you can only really have a full perception of reality and a better, clear understanding of who you are yourself if you kind of have a reflection of yourself and of your experience through others. And I mean, like, one example of this is, like, if you're going to go on a hike, would you rather just go on a hike? Like, of course, there's places for, like, going on a hike alone. But would you rather go on a hike alone or with, like, a person or, like, a small group? Like, it's probably going to be way more fun if you go with a group of people. It's probably going to be way more fun to do anything with other people. This lav mic keeps falling. It's probably more fun to do things with others than to do things alone. Like almost every time. And that's because you aren't just experiencing something. You're experiencing something through, like, you're experiencing something like kind of twice. The person who you're experiencing it with is reflecting their own subjective experiences onto you, and you're reflecting them onto them. And in that communication, you're not only seeing the things from your own perspective, you're also seeing a reflection through the perspective of others, and the shared experience that you both have, like, it's done in a context. It's done within kind of like a narrative framework that you can share with somebody else. Like if you just tell yourself a story, like there's no value in it. There's no experience because it's not relative to anything. It's relative. Like if you are looking at something through your own subjective framework, you know, then there's no kind of, there's nothing objective to it. There's nothing kind of grounding it. There's nothing making it mean anything, right? Because you could be anything, you know, in terms of your perceptions, like there's nothing kind of grounding you to something where there's some context or there's some thing that makes your experience make sense, right? Like if you're looking at something alone without any perspective, without any like other outside kind of thing that keeps it in check, then it's like you're sitting on a boat in an ocean. Like there's no scale, there's nothing that kind of makes it make sense. But with the constraint of others that have a subjective experience different to your own, that apply a different narrative to a situation, then you have two narratives or more narratives that kind of map themselves onto a situation, which gives it kind of a real kind of, a real complex, well, it's not just complexity, it gives it a grounding. Because, like, let's say, like, if two people define something in, like, their own, well, if two people if one person describes something, what I'm essentially saying is if one person describes something subjectively, then, you know, there's not really much you can glean from that, you know, if no one else is kind of looking at it. But if you have two people describing something, you have two subjective viewpoints. You have the viewpoint of what the author meant by what he's describing, and then you have the viewpoint of the person interpreting it, who is interpreting it through an entire set of vocabulary and experiences and internal metaphors that makes them understand what you just said in a completely different manner. But even if they're interpreting it slightly differently or completely differently, you guys both have a grasp of the core essential idea that you're looking at. It's kind of like imagine look at your eyes, right? With only one eye, you don't have depth perception because your eyes generate, through the parallax effect, you can essentially see kind of a depth to something. The parallax effect is essentially, if you have two things that are like kind of a known distance apart from each other, then using like essentially trigonometry, and a few other things, like look up the parallax effect, but through some math and whatever, you can essentially guess with a good degree of accuracy how far away something is if you have two separate observation points. If you have only one, then you can see the image, but you can't exactly see you can't see what the image actually, you know, how far it is. You can't, there's a huge world of information that you don't have. You know, you're only seeing half of the picture. And like a world without any depth to it is a world without any depth. There's no kind of, you know, there's a lot you're missing. But so my point is this. If you have a subjective experience and you experience something with another person, then it gives an incredible depth to that experience. And it grounds it in reality. Because like you can, if you're just alone and you're kind of trying to perceive something and you're trying to understand the world, then there's you could there's nothing keeping you in check. There's nothing making you actually your ideas actually adhere to base reality. It's just, you know, I could say, you know what, like let's say I make one little flaw in logic. Let's say I think to myself, you know, maybe we or maybe, you know, everything, like half of things are holograms, and I just accept that as an a priori truth, right? If I'm in the context of like another person might catch that and say, hey, no, that's a problem. And then I
I revise my model of the world. But like if I don't have someone else to kind of put my subjective like experience or model of reality in check, then there could be a runaway effect where like you end up developing a model that doesn't make any sense compared to reality. Or you can get, if you don't make like a big jump and you don't just make an a priori like blind conclusion, then what can happen is you just don't know what's reality. And I think this is the huge problem. This is the huge point I'm making. Without another person, you know, without another experience, without the communication of another subjective observer, then you don't really know what reality is, I think, completely. Like you might have some grasp of it, but I think you need you need others to ensure that you do have a grasp on reality. Because, well, especially with regards to identity, because you can't see yourself. You can never see yourself. Even in a mirror, you can't see yourself. In a mirror, you see a mirror image of yourself, which is not yourself. The only people who can see you are others. And they can see you in, 1,000 times more complexity than you can see yourself. They can see your actions, your behaviors, the way you sound, the way your ideas sound. They can see you without the little biases and the little, things that you have simplified about yourself and ignored. Like, let's say you're an arrogant person or something like that. But over the years, you've kind of said, no, I'm actually not arrogant. I'm just assertive or something like that. But someone else who's another subjective observer looks at you and says, oh, wait, no, yeah, this person's arrogant. If you have another person that tells you that, then you can understand yourself. But if you don't have someone who, provides some communication to you about who you are, then you are dissociated from reality. Because it's impossible to really perceive who you are. And so I guess that's kind of step one. But the real point I'm making is kind of deeper than that. It's not just that we're trying to figure out who we are, and other people can make your understanding of the world more accurate, which is interesting because your experience and others' experiences aren't objective. They're not like a God's eye view. They're wrong oftentimes. Oftentimes they're very wrong. Like the way you perceive the world is very flawed and is plagued by emotions. It's plagued by bad preconceptions. It's plagued by the lies that you tell yourself, and lapses in truth, and lapses in judgment, and lapses in morals, and all of that combines along with your finite nature and your finite perception to make it so that your view of the world is actually, it's subjective. It likely doesn't really align with reality very well. But to you, it seems like it. And that to me seems like the definition of subjectivity. It's a model that to a conscious observer is, reality. Because what else is it? A subjective observer observing something isn't going to say, my consciousness is not real. You can't say your consciousness isn't real. It is. It simply is real. And it simply will always be real. Like, you can't think your way out of consciousness. So the model that you automatically create through your experience is real to you. In other words, it is true to you. And, well, that's that, isn't it? So, anyway, the point is, we have this unavoidable, unescapable fact of consciousness, and it's flawed, but my point is, which is really cool, through the reflection of multiple consciousnesses off each other, you can have a better understanding of who you are and of reality. But this is assuming something big. This is assuming that you guys have a good moral framework and you guys have a devotion to the truth. Because let's say you have multiple people who are devoted to the epistemological base truth of reality. And they find that there are discrepancies between their understandings of reality, their models, right? Like there's some acceptable discrepancies, but then there are some that are like, ground truth discrepancies that you can't have. Like for example, the idea that, nothing is real. Like, right? If you had someone who cares about the truth who says nothing is real, then there's a huge problem there. So, the group should correct that, or maybe, try and have the group kind of figure that idea out or something like that. Anyway, but I'd say if you have a group, and this is the problem, the group itself isn't actually a foolproof entity. It has huge problems with it because it's not just, you still have subjective experiences. You can have a better understanding with a group that is reflecting off of itself. But if you have the group believe in the wrong things, take the wrong a priori truths, then you can, I feel like you can, instead of being like groups of people being a force that corrects themselves and leads them to a better spot, what ends up happening, given the group or given people in the group have really wrong a priori principles, the group will actually, how would you say it, have a self-reinforcing feedback loop that goes in a epistemologically wrong direction to how reality actually is. And I think this 100% happens. It's you have a group of people, and you see this all the time, who let's look at like a bunch of party girls, right? Oftentimes what I see is you have a bunch of party girls who, maybe they were not, girls who just start going to college, right? Maybe they were nice, and maybe they didn't have great morals, but they weren't complete degenerates when they went to college. But then they get into a group of a bunch of other girls who, maybe one of them is a super degenerate person. And then what ends up happening is, and you see this all the time, but you have groups of these girls, and maybe even guys too, like frat guys and stuff, but they end up, saying, one of the a priori truths that we have is nihilism, hedonistic nihilism, wherein all we really care about is the present moment's gratification, because that's the only thing that is real. And in doing so, the best way to enact that is through hedonistic indulgence in drugs, maybe alcohol, or a party, a constant carnival lifestyle, constant party lifestyle. And what you see is people who went into college who didn't think this, and this is interesting, they didn't think like this when they went into college, but after they leave college, this is how they thought for 4 years. This is what they became. This is who they became, because they were in a group that self-reinforced these principles. Because you had people in the group, or the entire group, that took these as a priori principles, and maybe because they were the strongest voice, or maybe the strongest wills, they ended up pushing the group in that direction, And the problem is that people are fragile. People are susceptible to suggestion. And if you have someone who's willing to make the jump, and willing to put their foot down, then oftentimes what you'll see is people kind of bending their knee in terms of maybe ideology, maybe philosophy, maybe religion, however you want to describe it, to the person who puts their foot down. And then in terms of group dynamics, it seems like that's how the staple of who like maybe in the fundamental a priori identities, this is how these are developed within group dynamics. Anyway, that's kind of not what we're trying to talk about. What I'm trying to talk about is perception. The point is, a group can it seems to me like well, it's definitely true that a group can alter the way that self-perception exists. And it also seems to me like a group, or at least another person to reflect who you are, that is something that is 100% necessary to understand yourself. Otherwise, you're kind of like, it's a shot in the dark. You know, a person is like a flashlight, a mirror and a flashlight on yourself. You yourself is like a candle in a muddy pond. Like, you're not going to get much from just yourself. You need to have interactions with others to understand who you are. That's point number one. Point number two, your relation to a group and maybe the principles of that group also probably shape who you are as well. But anyway, the point that I wanted to talk about during this podcast, this is the main point. This is the thing. I'm thinking about this. Okay, actually, first off, I gotta say, a lot of the discussion we've been having has been talking about the subjectivity of experience. Now, it's not to say it's all subjective. I think there are huge objective anchors. Like, who you are is primarily really a result of who you are genetically. It's not, something that is completely socially created. Like, there's a huge part of who you are, like, at least in terms of skills, in terms of, talents, not talents, but, competencies and temperaments that is genetic. Like, competencies and temperaments are, like, seem to me to be primarily genetic. Now, the things that aren't genetic are how we, the flavor of who we end up becoming and the principles we end up accepting. Those are not genetic. Those are learned. Anyway, and I have very good reason to believe both of those things. Like, this is statistically and psychologically kind of seems to me to be proven. Like, if you don't say this, and if you don't think that, then I don't know. I think you have you're ignoring you're ignoring a lot of research evidence to the contrary of your thoughts if you don't think this is true. Anyway, blah blah blah. So anyway, here's the point. I was thinking to myself, okay, let's look at the archetypal meanings of the identity of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. And let's look at how those entities perceive themselves. How do they perceive themselves, and how do they communicate who they are? Archetypally, right? And this is this emerges as the masculine and the feminine, and you know what those kind of are, right? The masculine is trying to be strong. It's trying to be, it's trying to be like a strong provider who defends, something like that. And then the feminine is like trying to be a nurturing supporter that cares, or something like that. I don't know. And then these archetypes kind of emerge as how would you say it? They emerge in aesthetics, like in terms of your fashion, in terms of how you speak, in terms of how you behave in the world, right? And what I see for most straight guys out there, because this is where we're going. This is going to be interesting. It's not. I don't think it's what you think. It's where we're going. It's not going to be some like trans allegory or something like that. It's actually going to go in a very interesting direction. I don't think you guys can see, unless I titled the podcast this, which in that case, well, then you already know what I'm talking about. But what are we talking about? Oh yeah, most straight guys I've seen, they have there's a common denominator common way of acting that I've seen across all of who they are. Like, the straight guy is a guy who, they try and act kind of, rough, and I hate the word macho, but they try and act macho, let's say. Like, they every time I talk with a straight guy, or there's a group of straight guys, they end up having, their voice goes, they end up talking like, lower voice. They bring their voice down a few octaves, and so what we're gonna do is we're gonna do this, and then that, and da 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 da, and then after, like, let me try and talk. So they end up talking like this or something like that, So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over here, and we're gonna do that, and we're gonna do that. Like, you notice this. They fucking straight guys who are in the company of people who are unfamiliar to them end up dropping their voice a few octaves and, acting in such a way, right? And then women, right? Women, let's say women, when they are around someone who they're attracted to, they end up bumping their voice up. They bump their voice up several octaves, and they talk higher, and then their personality kind of changes, they act fucking more girly or whatever, or they can. That's I guess one way of doing it. But an interesting thing to note, which you do see in some girls, I think, who are trying to live out the archetype of the feminist woman, in that, it's a woman who, is trying to go into the spaces and the, the modes of being commonly occupied by men. This feminist woman archetype, oftentimes, which is oftentimes the party girl archetype that I've noticed in my experience, they end up dropping their voices too. They end up having like the Valley Girl kind of talk, kind of like, hey, Brittany, Brittany, listen, like, fuck, I don't know, but it's vocal trill. So we're gonna do that, and we're gonna do that, Like, the point is, like, this is from a little bit of kind of linguistic information that I saw, which, might not be completely perfectly described by me, but essentially the vocal trill is when you kind of make that sound. You can hear it in your voice. And what that means, when you hear that in someone's voice, and you can hear this in guys' voices too when they, they're trying to act tough or whatever. But that's them taking their voice to, like, the lowest it can go comfortably, Like, you can do this. You can go really low. But that's kind of stupid. Vocal trill allows you to go to, like, the lowest octave that you can talk comfortably at, like, in terms of a conversational manner. And that's kind of my understanding of it. I might be wrong, but the point is, when you hear someone talking like this, hey bro, what's up, bro? Like, the frat guys, they talk like that. Hey bro, what's up? Like, they're trying to act like super masculine, right? They're trying to go out with, they're trying to get that pussy. And you see the party girls do that too. The types of people who are trying to live out the archetype of, the feminist or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, point is, when you hear someone talking in vocal trill, this is the big point. That means that they are trying to lower their voice, trying to speak in a deeper or lower octave voice. They're trying to speak at a lower frequency. Oh, is it frequency? I think it is. They're trying to speak at a lower frequency than they would typically speak at. I think that's an accurate way of saying it. But yeah, vocal trill. This is, interesting aside. but that's why you hear some girls talk like that. Also, statistically, this is true. Girls who talk like that are perceived as not being as intelligent as girls who talk just normally. Food for thought. Think about why that is. So anyway, what were we talking about? Vocal control. Okay, no. So those are kind of common experiences that you guys have most likely seen about how different people present themselves, at least in terms of the point of view of voice. Yeah. I'm shoving some laundry into a laundry basket. This is not going to go well. Perfect. Okay. Okay, what were we talking about? Vocal trill, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, no, let's. Now this is the big primary point that I'm getting to. This is the reason for the season, the reason for the podcast. You know what the archetypal masculine, I'm pouring detergent in the laundry machine. That's why it sounds like a babbling brook in here. So you know the archetypal male and female way of existing. But the interesting thing that I've thought about is, what about gay people? How do gay people act within the world? And you have the archetypal male and masculine and feminine, right? And it seems to me that homosexuals, on average, act in a much different way than their straight counterparts. For example, in terms of, and you guys know this, so just anyway. What you notice on average is, like, gay people, they talk on average in a very unique way, where it's like, "Hey buddy, what's up? How's it going? So we're gonna go and do this and da 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 da." It might be a little lisp, it might be kind of like a airy, flowy thing to them or whatever, and tends to be at a higher octave, whatever. And then I think lesbian women that I've kind of interacted with, it's funny. They always seem kind of very like, maybe like they're very bored and uninterested, and then they try and talk at a lower octave or something like that. And they try and act all dark and moody or whatever. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe sometimes you see the opposite of that. But that's kind of an archetype that I've seen. The lesbian woman that talks in deep voice, the butch lesbian, whatever. And then you have the what is it called? The kind of the higher, airier kind of gay persona. And okay, now we've just looked at this under one dimension, right? And the one dimension is voice. But the big point I'm trying to talk about here isn't voice. That's not the point. I feel like that would be kind of stupid to just talk about that. The point I'm trying to talk about here is, why are there differences in the way that archetypal gay versus straight men and gay versus straight women act within the world? And the reason is, the reason I thought previously is because, maybe gay guys are just trying to, use that as a signaling mechanism, because, they want to, meet other guys and whatever, and if they talk, in a more gay manner, then that would signal to other gay guys that they're gay or whatever. So maybe it's that. But maybe, and that could be a part of it, but I wasn't really satisfied with that idea. I don't think that's completely true. The alternative, I'd say, is, hold on one second. Oh shit. Oh gosh, man. Oh yeah. Okay, that's fine. What's the alternative? I'm forgetting. Hold on. The alternative isn't that it's some conscious kind of choice to kind of, attract who they are interested in. The thought is that it could be something much different and maybe much more unconscious. And the point I'm going to try and develop here is that this this way of existing and signaling in reality, and not just signaling, I would say, and actually being, is a result of the molded method of self-perception that I developed earlier, that I talked about earlier. The way that, you become who you are, not because you just simply are that way, but because you're molded into who you are, in terms of kind of who you think you are, by the perceptions of others, because others serve as a mirror to you. And this is where I think it gets really interesting. So, what do you call it? Okay, this is gonna. Okay, so let me sit down for this. Gay men, for example, by definition, they shouldn't really care about how they're perceived. Or no, this is the big point. Yeah, okay, anyway, yeah. Gay men, they probably don't care about how they're perceived by women. Isn't that the definition of it? Sexually, they don't care how they're perceived by women in the sexual marketplace. And one of the reasons, why I think we act in the way that we do in terms of our archetypes is because we are acting for the purpose of living up as well as we can to an archetype of masculine or feminine, because those archetypes are the most attractive things for the opposite sex. And sexual being, sexual existence, is one of the primary forces of human, of human consciousness, of who we are. If not the primary thing. I mean, what else would be? What else would be? Like, the sexual being of humanity is the means by which humanity survives. It's the means by which humanity propagates itself. So, my point is, the way that we act in terms of masculine and feminine seems to me to be a result of our attempt to act as well as we can in accordance with the masculine and feminine, because that is a successful strategy on the sexual marketplace. And here's the point. Men and women are attracted, like if you take like 1,000 faces and you merge them all together to find the average face that comes out of it, that is like the most attractive face from that 1,000, right? The average, like, if you take the average of everything, you iron out all the weird kind of, how would you say it? The weird outliers and the fucking deformities and the ugly crap, and you get, the average summation of everything, and that becomes, that is, like, by definition, like the ideal standard of beauty within that group, right? And if you take the average of different like countries and stuff like that, different people groups and different things, you come to different average faces and different, looks. And those are kind of what the ideal beauty that comes from that society. Anyway, and this is why, people have, probably, prefer people who are more similar to them in terms of sexuality on average, because like if you look at a society and you look at the average that society produces, there's an archetype to that. That is the archetype, the average that is the sexually most perfect version of whatever that group is, and since they're all different, you're probably going to stay in the silo of whatever group you're in, because that's the most sexually attractive to you, because it's the most average. Now this is kind of a circular flow of reasoning, but the evidence suggests this. The evidence suggests that the most average from the group, not the most average person from the group. No, that's not it. But the average, the summation of all faces, the summation of all types and groups and all this stuff, that turns into the ideal, because you're normalizing everything. You're taking that's anyway. So here's the point. Masculine and feminine as archetypal ideals seem to me to emerge in a similar way, as they are, that's the average of what it means to be, maybe it's not the average, but that's, if you take the most sexually desirable men and you try and find the commonality between it, that's what masculinity is. Same thing with femininity. You find the most attractive females and you try and find the commonality between it, and that's what the most attractive female is. And this is why men, as it would seem, try to adhere to these standards, because like in men and women both do this. Like, this is why women, when they talk to someone who they find attractive, they end up making their voice go higher and all that stuff, and they try and act more I don't fucking know, submissive or whatever. Or they try and play into their hand, and like women who are very attracted to a man, they end up giving over a lot of their power to them. Or at least that's one way of doing it. Or they, there's flirting and all that. Like, there's a lot of, it's complicated, But one thing that they do is like a woman who laughs at a guy's jokes, who, even if they're not funny, that's a sign that she's attracted to him. But that's kind of her giving him power. It's her saying, oh, you know what, I'm being subservient to you in terms of your humor, because, if you laugh at someone's jokes, you're saying, oh, you're giving them kind of a indication that, no, yeah, you were funny, you were intelligent, you were clever, and anyway, we're kind of going in the weeds, but the point is, these archetypes emerge because there's a reason for that emergence. And I'm just saying that it's interesting to see where the emergence comes from. And what it means to be a man seems to me, as I'm saying, to come from the relational emergence and the relational kind of reflectance of male to female perception. And they both kind of make men and women conform to different molds, because that is what the ideal is for both men and women, because of their, the perception that they have. So let's go back to gay people. Gay people, on the other hand, gay men, anyway, they don't seem to conform to the same archetypes, which is why, a lot of guys, they don't like gay people, because they don't conform to the archetypes, and they're not playing the same game as the guys are. They're playing their own little game. And my point is, the reason why I think that they aren't conforming to these archetypes isn't because they're just trying to attract, well, in a way that's just because they're trying to attract other guys, but it's because it's not because of an attempt to do something. It's because of a lack of something. Actually, it's because they don't have the same self-reinforcing feedback mechanism, which causes them to want to become different people than who they maybe are in a baseline mode of being. They don't need to conform to the views of women or whatever. They don't need to conform to this socially acceptable presentive and identity framework. Like they don't, like if a woman says, "Oh no, you're acting really weird" or whatever, then the guy's gonna be like, "Oh, I don't care, because like what do I need to impress you?" Like if a woman tells a guy, "Oh, you're acting really weird," like the guy's probably gonna like stand up and be like, "What the fuck? What am I doing wrong? Like shit, like this isn't good," and then he'll probably change himself. But if a woman or if a gay guy does that, like, and if a woman says, "Oh, you're acting weird. What are you doing?" He'll say, "I don't care. Who cares about that? Like you can go fuck yourself." And the reason for that is because there's no sexual there's no sexual stakes. You don't get anything from it. So the only thing you have is like a self-reinforcing feedback loop of male on male, and then you have some individual archetype that comes from that. Now, this is the idea. This could be an idea. I think there's two possibilities. Either you have a runaway positive feedback loop of male to male kind of perceptions that end up coming about from gay people. Where they end up developing their own archetype. Or, and this is kind of an idea I was thinking about, like, what if that was true? Or, what if that's just the base way of men being, right? What if that's just how men would act in the absence of a corrective framework provided by women? Like gay guys, they're very, they tend to occupy, it seems like, a lot of very creative areas, like theater, for example, populated by a lot of gay people. And the question is, why is that? You're allowed, like in theater, by definition, you're allowed to, that's where you being yourself is like the biggest thing. You're trying to be, you're trying to put yourself out there, and as a guy, as a straight guy, like that's a really fucking dangerous thing. I'm going to put myself out there and maybe look ridiculous while doing it. A musical, for example, like you're putting yourself out there and you are maybe sometimes not conforming to the ideal archetypal male being, right? Especially since you're like singing in like a high voice and stuff like that. Like that, oftentimes it seems to me for like straight people would be like suicide. Like you are, acting in a effeminate way maybe, or like in a non-archetypally male way. And like if you do that, then that means that the corrective framework of the feminine is gonna like pound down on you, and you're not gonna be reproductively successful maybe. And gay guys, they don't care about that. They don't care about that at all. So what they do is they're okay. They are okay with going into that area. They're okay with going into theater because the effects of the female gaze, let's say, doesn't have any effect on them. So they end up just being okay with being completely free with how they present themselves, I guess. And so the idea here could be, it could potentially be conceivable that in the absence of a female corrective framework, you have the archetypal gay man emerge. Maybe the archetypal gay man is just like what guys would be, just them by themselves. Like Because like I don't know, a lot of the guys I know, like there's like there's a silly element to them. There's like a there's a whimsical and fun way like side to them, and there's a how would you say it, like a very humorous attitude and a very um, like there's a manner of being that doesn't conform exactly to the archetypal male standard, and like you also can see this in terms of like dissonant online communities, like communities that are like primarily male dominated. They say things that like the modern like modern women would be like, what the hell are you talking about? Like it would scare away a lot of modern women, and yeah. Uh, so my point is like maybe the way that we see gay people exist as like an archetype, maybe that points to like a hidden layer of masculinity or hidden persona of masculinity that is kind of stifled by our social environment currently. And you could say, oh, that's a terrible thing, but maybe it's a good thing. Maybe we need to be corrected. Maybe we need to fill roles because and change ourselves through this kind of form of social engineering because to live in a society, to live in an environment where you need to conform to a system of rules and incredible complexity, it's imperative that you put aside your own individual whims and your own individual wants for for something that is more pragmatic, right? Like for example, like let's say that let's say you looked at how commercials used to be shot. They put like glue in a bowl of cereal, and then they put cereal on top of it, and it would look like really nice. It would be like a idealized version of it, but it's completely fake. Sometimes in old commercials they'd pour like motor oil on pancakes instead of syrup because syrup would just soak through it, but motor oil stays on top and it looks very good, right? That stuff that looks very good actually isn't would not be good for you or would kill you, right? So you need to put a hamper on your things that might look good, are actually in the modern world of technology and just more responsibility. There's things that you can't just blindly go into. You need to change your own desires. You need to change your own being in a way to conform to a world that is more complicated than just the simple default model that your brain kind of gives you. So anyway, maybe I'm wrong though. I feel like both of these are kind of true. You both have in conclusion there probably is an archetype, a base male archetype that isn't just masculine. And you could say, oh, it's masculine and feminine, but I don't think that's completely true either. I think it's probably some weird third thing that you don't exactly completely see. You don't exactly completely see because it's kind of suppressed by social expectation. There's probably a female archetype that is the same way. I don't know. Because also like looking from the outside. Again, the thing is, feel like you see glimpses of this, like when you have like all male group chats, weird dissonant political group chats. Like they end up doing weird stuff, going into weird, bizarre kind of areas. And in a way, you also see this being like actually hypermasculine, where like maybe some of these group chats they talk about war, and they talk about like stuff that would quote scare the hose. And you look at, like, let's say primarily female dominated spaces, let's say on TikTok or Pinterest or some Twitter circles, like they end up going in really weird directions. Like what the heck are you guys talking about? Like what the heck? Like this is it's not like it's not like a feminine kind of circle I see there. Some of them are like hyper feminine, which is weird too, but some of them are like weird. Some of them are like what is what? And maybe this is caused by a runaway kind of self-reinforcing principle that I talked about earlier, where you have, let's say the party girl group, where, they end up getting swayed by the most powerful person in that group to go into weird directions because the powerful person in that group believed in something weird or stupid. That's something that could definitely happen. But you could also have just a hidden aspect of women or the female psychology that ends up manifesting in bizarre ways. Anyway, the point is fundamentally that who we are is both kind of socially constructed and is also developed or emerges naturally from our initial conditions, namely being our our genetics, who we are essentially, and also maybe the a priori principles that we believe, right? And from that kind of comes the person of who we are. And I think the main point of this podcast was to say maybe the way that we perceive ourselves, or maybe the way that our being emerges in the way it currently exists, isn't the full picture. And we need to look beyond just, the archetypes of the masculine and feminine, which are true archetypes within the sexual marketplace, for maybe more subtle nuances to these archetypes that exist outside of the reinforcement frameworks caused by the perception of, male to female and female to male, where they kind of create, that interplay, that kind of dialectic creates the archetypal masculine and feminine. But it seems to me that there are deeper elements to this that occur without the masculine or feminine gaze and perceptual frameworks that correct these things. And the big question is, what are those things? What are those aspects of our being? And I feel like if we have a good answer for that, we'll understand who we are a lot better than we do now, and in a interesting and nuanced way. But anyway, that was the idea. That was the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. Yeah. Anyway, hope you guys got some value in it, and be sure to go up to a professor that teaches feminist studies, or a professor that teaches gender theory, and then show them this podcast and say this came from a prolific feminist writer. His name is Gilbert Gusnov, and then like hype it up, and then see what they have to say. And then as their face slowly contorts with horror and disgust, then you can have a good laugh. You can have a good laugh as they write F on your report card, and they flunk you from university. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Check out the rest of these, and yeah, keep on petering.